Welcome everyone. Super excited for this interview to bring out to you. Today I have Auntee Rik with me, who is known as a trusted business operations and systems specialist who has a knack for working with women-led businesses and guiding them in increasing clarity, confidence, and cash flow. So super excited to bring you out to her today. So Auntee Rik, can you kick it off and tell us a little bit more about your story and how you got started?
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I have been in the operation space for about 30-ish years, although I didn't know at first that it was business operations in some of those positions. Um, I spent a good chunk of time with a very large spirits company. So I had some global business exposure there. Um, and when I finished working there, I moved back to the States and kicked around for a little bit and trained in radio and TV and started working at a radio station. And during my time at the radio station, I was paired up with a new new DJ who was on during the middays, and people would keep calling him and asking him for stuff in the studio. And I would answer the phone, and I turned around and was like, "You need an assistant?" And he was like, "I do." And I was like, "Well, I'll be your assistant." And that was how I got my first client as a freelancer. That evolved into doing web design, and then brand design, which I did from 2006, 2007, up until 2019. And during that time, like as the design business evolved, I found that people wanted a website, but they really didn't have any direction for their business. Or I would see like they gained sales, but they had a problem fulfilling them because they didn't have any processes in place, or they were missing pieces. They were doing really well on the outside. But then I have friends who were starting businesses. They were all gung ho. They were, making money from doing the things they love. And they would shut down their business because the admin side was just too much and they were burning out. And it was really making me sad because these are like really talented people. They really love what they did, but just the back end of it all was making it very hard. And this was before we had accessible, what I call accessible automation, meaning you didn't have to pay like $100 or $1,000 a month for an enterprise solution. Um, there weren't any companies catering to the freelancer, the solopreneur, the person, funding their startup from their paycheck or from their savings, piece by piece. So it kind of clicked at some point, like, how a multinational, multi-million dollar business runs. You've had the benefit of directly learning from the whole C-suite of the company. It's no different when it's a one-person run show. It's just smaller numbers in most cases. And so I found myself including consulting on the operation side while I was doing design. Fast forward, I kept getting the nudge to do more consulting and do coaching. And I kind of wasn't loving the coaching part too much, but I love consulting because it's like, this is what we're focusing on. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a plan. You're going to go and do it. And then I'll check in with you. And if we have to do it again for another area, we'll do it again. And so that's basically the very short version of where I ended up today, minus the fact, like, I did this as a single mom. My daughter was 9 years old when I started. She's now 25. And it really afforded me Like when I was looking for a full-time job when I moved back to the States, because of where I had worked, I had hiring managers say that my resume was too intimidating and people wouldn't hire me because they would think I was coming for their job. And I really just wanted to support my daughter. So I was like, I don't have time to wait for you people to catch up with me. So I really did start my business out of necessity, and in survival mode. And so, I just built upon that and really used it to help other women get clearer, get some clarity. And then once you get the clarity, you have the confidence. And when you have the confidence, that's when you increase your cash flow because you don't have an issue, telling people what you do and who you are and how you can help them. But yeah, so, and then my daughter paid attention a little bit and she started her own business. And while she was in college, and she's an amazing chef. And so she made it a food business and a nonprofit. So she was using her cooking for others and then taking some of her profits and supplying for needs in the community that she was living in. So I'm really proud of that too.
That's awesome. That's such a great story. So I do have one question with regards to, being a single mom and also kind of being in between, having the like starting your own business. Because, I'm single with no kids, and there are still days when I'm like, dang, like I cannot even imagine having a kid running around me right now. So I always have so much respect for parents, especially single moms, because I mean, I know your daughter was 9, so like a little more grown up, other than some like one of my best friends, she has a toddler, a sassy toddler. So there's a lot to juggle. So how did you manage, still being a mom and showing up for your kid and starting something new on your own?
Okay, so what I have to say as far as like the stages the kids go through, I think people think that once they get older, they need you less, and they actually need you more. Not so much of a, um, not so much in the physical sense, but they definitely need you more emotionally and to help them through their decision making. And I was glad that I was in that position to set my own hours, because not only was I there for my daughter in that capacity, but her friends. And, I was class mom. At one point in time, I was the PTA president for her middle school. She wasn't too happy with that. um, she moved. I ended up moving her in the seventh grade. I moved her to a different school, and they invited me and asked me to come and teach. So for about 3 years, I was also a teacher. And then when she got to high school, I was driving 140 miles a day. So because I work from home, so I had to take her to school and come back and then work and then go back and pick her up. So during that time, when I was on the road a lot, I would schedule my discovery calls and record them while I was driving to go and pick her up. And that actually worked out very well. And when she was younger, we lived really close to the school. So I would drop her off to school, grab me some breakfast. If I didn't feel like cooking, go home and get to work. And I was very, very strict about my time. At one point in time, I was like, there's got to be a better way to manage my time. So I put my calendar in my BlackBerry calendar, and I scheduled almost down to the minute, but I scheduled everything. Take her to school, go get coffee, come home, take off your shoes, put your clothes away, have a potty break. And I would set alarms for get up and eat. and that type of thing. Until it just became, it was kind of hard at first, but eventually it became routine. And then as she moved up, I kind of switched the schedule around a little bit, but I would do most of my admin work during the day. And then the design work I would do at night. When she was home for the summer, if she wasn't in camp or back in Bermuda with my family, I would ask her, like, until 10 a.m., I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then she would have me for the day. And then around 6-ish, or depending on what time we got in, I just worked my schedule around her schedule. Thankfully, I just had the one. I don't know how or if that would have worked out with multiple kids. I just had the one who was pretty much, I mean, she was involved in a lot of things as well. So like she 1 year she won the science fair for her school and competed at the state level, which meant driving 3 hours from home and, just a lot of time out and in the car. So, and then I couldn't wait inside the hall. So I just sat in the parking lot in my car, reclined back, dictated a couple of blog posts. It was really just making the best of the time wherever I was, basically. And just switching around working my schedule around her schedule and being really set on boundaries. Because my first clients were actually in some form of entertainment, and there's a certain culture that goes with that. People calling you all hours of the night, and someone called me at like 9 o'clock at night on a school night, and I called my client and I was like, I need you to get your people together, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell them that, but I need you to get them together. Do not call me after 7 p.m. Like, it'll wait. So strong boundaries as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because they're like all service providers and coaches, I feel like, especially when we just get started, it's like, oh, sure, I'll reply to your question. And then at some point it just comes as like, it's kind of too much. You're crossing a lot of lines over here. Like, not even my family calling me at 9 p.m.
Exactly.
So what would you say for service providers that are, because a lot of the times people get started and then they say, oh, I don't even know what to hire. I don't know what to outsource. I don't know what to automate. Or they say, I don't even know if it's the time to automate. Is there such a thing as, too early to automate or outsource certain things? Or should people start on working on their systems right away?
I think that it's a sliding scale. Depending on how long you've been in business, from the years I did design and working with a bunch of different clients across industries, I found that 18-month to 2-year mark is where people really started to get firmer in their brand messaging. And once you get firmer and more clear with your brand messaging, everything else falls in line. But I would find like clients would come to me and want to change their branding because their target audience changed or the direction they wanted to go in changed. But that only came after, time doing something for a certain amount of time. And it was usually around that 18-month to 2-year mark. So like some people do something once or twice and they're like, oh, this isn't working. Well, they haven't given it time to work. And you just don't have like the data behind it. Even if you're not recording the data, it still kind of sticks in your head. So when it's time to do something else, you still have like that in the back of your mind, like, oh, wait a minute, we tried this, it didn't work, or we tried this and it worked wonderfully, let's go back to that. If you're just starting out, your focus should be generating revenue. So the systems you need is a way to get seen, like create your visibility, a way to deliver your service, and a way to get paid. That's where you should start. Um, I wouldn't focus on automation because you can only automate what you're familiar with, or what you know the process for, right? And one thing I keep seeing is people are just starting out and they're looking at like the top people in their industry, they're consuming all the content and they're like, okay, this person uses this tool, I'm going to get this tool too. And they're paying $100 a month, but they haven't made their first dollar. And it's like, doesn't even make sense to do, right? Um, it's, you definitely shouldn't be spending out more than you're making in. So I would say slow down on the automation part. It's like the tool I love and use for my automation, most of my automation is Dubsado. I used Dubsado for a year before I even added workflow and workflow automations into my systems. I had everything documented. I had it all set up in the templates, and I was just sending as I needed it to go. And that way I became a lot more familiar with what I wanted to happen next. So now, like, if someone says I need somebody to fill out a form, I need them to get an email after that form. After they send in that form, I want them to get an invite to my calendar. So now I know it's just, okay, when this happens, I need this to happen. When this happens, I need that to happen. And the automation part of it comes a lot easier, but you can only automate what you know needs to happen. And that just comes with, doing it yourself. Now, as far as hiring, it's pretty much the same thing. You have to know what needs to be done in order to do a job description. In order to know if the candidate has the right skills. Somebody might look great on paper and they have Excel experience and they can run this software and that software and they're great with Squarespace, but your website is WordPress. And you've hired this great person and they gel and everything, but they don't have the skills for the tools you're using. So it doesn't really make sense, right? So you have to be familiar with what you're using so you don't end up wasting time and money. And people love to run from the documentation part of their systems and their SOPs. And you end up wasting other people's time when you don't have those things not fully built out, but just even an inkling of an idea. You end up wasting people's time because you don't have anything to give them, or you don't know what to give them to do, or you're giving them stuff to do that is way beneath their skill level, and you're both wasting time that could be used doing other things. So when you're first starting out, just get those systems in place to get you visible, that you can deliver your service and you can get paid. And as you do that, and you do that more and more, you start to find better things. And then don't be in a rush to pay for stuff before you start making money. Like, keep your expenses low. And then take your experiences, just write them down, bullet point them. You can flush them out later. They're never going to be finished. Like, excuse me, it's not a one and done situation. It's continuous. So I would say, like, make time, not find time, but make time, just to go through and write down what you did for the day. And that way you have a list of what you need to document rather than go from the top of your head. So, like, when I do it as a big project, I start like every other day around the 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll write down everything that I can remember that I did in the morning. And that's one list. And so for 1 week, I'll do that. And if I happen to hit, my off days are Saturdays. Like I don't do anything on Saturdays. I'm not doing housework. I'm not doing client work. I'm not doing anything. If I move from my bed to the couch downstairs, that's it. I'm not cooking. I'm ordering in food. Like I don't do anything on Saturdays. So, but if one of my recording days includes a Saturday, I still write down what I did because that's a personal side of things and that's my self-care. And if it happens to be a movie or a show that I watched, I like to record that too. So I do include like my off days in that recording.
I like that you mentioned as well that keep your expenses low in the beginning, because a lot of the times, I see new coaches and consultants and service providers, they see, like, they find a YouTube video, oh, like Dubsado or ClickUp or Airtable and all those tools. And they're like, oh, I'm about to like pay for those and start using them and blah, blah. And I'm like, keep your stuff low, because like you can be a cheapskate and still, start with anything, with nothing. Because there's a lot of people that say, oh, it takes money to make money. Yes and no, because I started in the very first business when I was 19. I didn't have anything. Like my parents first supported me, and then it was like my expenses were like $100 a month. So, I mean, and I always tell people as well, it's like, don't try to do something like, for example, like you're at level, 50 when you're level 1, right? So don't try to like jump yourself too quickly. So when it comes to like you answered one of my questions already, like what's the first system you want to create, the lead generation, the visibility. So what would you say, so if you were to, I like to ask this question as well, so if you were to get started all over again, knowing what you know now and knowing what you do right now, what would you do differently? Like, would you I don't know, create different systems? Would you, I don't know, choose different platforms? Would you, I don't know, skip some of the mistakes you made?
I would have charged more, a lot more, a lot more. I built my first website. Well, okay, so I'll split this in half. So if I was to start over as a web designer, I'd have charged a lot more. I built my first website for $500.
Me too.
I would never, ever do that again. Not ever. I ended where my audit and consultation was $750, right? At the time I ended. Now, as a coach and consultant, I did have to start over. So I was a lot better at pricing. And then I got a coach. I finally found a coach. And my looking for a coach journey took about 13 years. But that's just because of my experience, my personality, and just like, okay, I know you know how to make money, but I need to know what you know about other stuff. And my coach, who is also your coach, miles above anybody else who I had come across. So I really wanted to make sure that when I got a coach, that I was actually learning and not just having somebody like basically tell me what I already knew and not like give me any further answers. I needed somebody who I could learn from. So I couldn't do that part differently just because it just took so long to find a coach. But I would say to someone who's just starting out, like, definitely do all the things. Try all the things. Forget about what experts say you should be doing, because honestly, like, free information is free because it's not specific, right? It's like, you can ask me what you should use, And I'm going to tell you, it depends. And people hate that answer. They hate to hear it depends. Why does it have to depend? Because there are 100 answers to that question, and only one or two of them are going to be right for you. And it's not just based on the type of business you have or the type of clients you serve, but it's based really on how you want your business to run. And that's why people say it depends, because I need more information. I tweeted something a while ago that was like, free advice isn't specific, and specific advice is not free. Right. And it's not just a matter of, it's not just because it's a money grab. Like, it takes time for someone to come and ask you the questions, to know what questions to ask first, and then ask you the questions to get you the right answers, to get you something that works for you, rather than just commenting on different people's, oh, what system is that? I'm going to go use that. Or what do you think about this system? I mean, it's cool. It's expensive. I don't think I would use it even if I was making $100,000 a month, right? But yeah, the definite thing I would have done differently starting over was charge more. Because charging more just affords you so much more relief, right? And kind of takes a lot of decisions out of the bucket when you don't have to make decisions based on money. Like, when you can make a decision and no matter what the answer is, it's in the budget. So I definitely would have started off at a higher rate.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And our coach always says, hey, triple your prices. Like, you see the price, triple it, double it, you gotta raise it. We were doing the same thing with my friend yesterday. She was showing me the package she was working on. She was like, what do you think about the price? And I'm like, you probably should raise it because it does involve a lot of your time. And I'm sometimes scared, like, literally shitless when it comes to raising price. Like, is anybody going to pay that? Are there people who value that information that much? So, and then I feel like it always comes back to the experience that you have that the other person doesn't. And if they want to do free, there's YouTube, but free only takes you so far.
Mm-hmm. That and like, it's not even them paying you for the knowledge. They're paying you so they don't have to do it. Like, I don't pay, well, I pay my daughter because I kind of know her love language, right? So I don't feel like cooking on Sunday. I'll send her a message. Hey, can you make me whatever meal for Sunday? And I'll cash app her the money for the groceries. Well, she usually buys the groceries, but I do pay her for her time. She cooks very well. I don't like to cook. I like to eat. I don't like to cook, right? So, like, anything that makes my life easier, I'm going to pay for it. And a lot of people are like that. And like, one of the things that helps me over that objection of, that feeling that comes up when you have to raise your prices, but you're wondering if anybody will pay it. Just imagine that person charges 3 times what you're charging per hour, and you're saving them from 10 hours of work. Your package needs to be close to the amount of money you're saving them in time. That's one way that takes the ickiness out of raising rates, because it's not, the value is in all honesty, especially as you get with like higher level offers, the value is in the transformation, but it's also in the time saved. Yeah.
And I keep seeing sometimes those posts in Facebook groups, and it looks very disrespectful, and I'm glad that people started to finally kind of see through, because there was a post on in a ClickFunnels group the other day. Somebody was like, hey, I'm looking for a VA for $2 to $3 an hour. I'm like, excuse me, And it's
Yeah.
like people literally, they're like, oh, I need help with my business. I'm like, I can't remember who posted on Twitter. Either it was you or Ari. It's like, you can't just hire somebody else to grow your business. You kind of have to do that yourself in the beginning. And especially if you want to hire that out, you gotta pay the price because you're going to be making way more.
Yeah. You have to pay people to care.
Huh?
You know, like you really have to pay people to care. Before the pandemic, we would go, my daughter and I would go out, and if we got somebody that was very friendly and very helpful in a store or a restaurant, we'd always look at each other and be like, they really like their job. They must pay well. Like, I mean, you just have to pay people to care. And people looking for $2 to $3 an hour, they're clearly looking at people in other countries and think that because their cost of living is lower, that they can pay lower. But then you honestly get a lower level of quality, right? Like, sometimes being cheap is very expensive,
Very
and
true.
you really have to pay people to care. Even on the provider side, like, I used to have a saying, like, if you have said, I don't get paid enough for this, can I cuss?
Yeah.
You have to be like, I don't get paid enough for this shit. If you said that 3 times this week, you gotta raise your rates. Right? And if there isn't a level you can raise your rate to for you to not say that, stop doing it. Right? You got to stop doing it. If there's no amount of money that will make you not say that as you're doing that, stop doing it. Like, you don't have to be obligated to do it.
That's such a golden piece of advice right there. I love it. Because there are certain projects, like especially when you get started, like I remember, like charging $500 for these websites back in like, I don't know, like 4 years ago. And I was like, dang, this is really a lot of freaking work.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and I used to think back in like, I think when it was like 2017 or so when I was charging, that little for websites. And there are some people I did one of those Instagram reels about that, me charge, like it was like a funny one, charging for that. And somebody was like, oh, like if you're charging this much money for a website, you're like robbing people. I'm like, no, I'm not. They're literally making, I don't know, multiple 4 or 5 figures from those websites. That's a money maker. That's not just, oh, let me just make you a 1-page website or whatever. People gotta, if something is really saving you time or making you money, it's worth paying for.
Exactly. And I like to stay far, far, far away from people who think that. Like, stay over there. I saw, I really hate that I can't find the website anymore. But this was a while back. And it was a lady who did packaging design. And she only took 5 clients a year, and she charged $60,000 a year. So $5,000 a month for packaging design. And they had a set amount that they would get every month, but you have to sign a 1-year contract with her. And at $5,000 a month. And when I saw that, it like blew my mind. Really, like, wait a minute, I can do this. So let me figure out how to do this for me. And that really like changed my perspective. And I would have people tag me whenever I need a web designer. I was like, please stop tagging me unless you're sure that people have a $10,000 budget. Because it's not just, well, especially with web design, like, okay, your site is built, but then what? Because it's not, this day and age, it's not set it and forget it. Your site needs maintenance. It needs updating. There's a lot of compliance that goes in with it. And most people aren't aware, and they aren't paying for it. Like, they're not going to do it themselves. So I changed my packages so that essentially what they pay for up front covered a year of service. Some people chose to do the maintenance on a monthly basis, and others were fine with paying for it. In that first 3 months, they paid for it, and then the maintenance carried on for another 9 months. But because there's nothing like investing all that money into having a site done, and then you get flagged and banned from Google because something is out of whack, you haven't touched it in 6 months, or stuff like that. So, like, seeing that package laid out that way just sent off all kinds of fireworks in my brain. I was like, "Ooh, I know I can figure this out." But ultimately, I got into web design because it was something I was good at. It wasn't something I loved. I loved the transformation. I loved the reaction from the clients. Like, I did one for a school. It was a friend of a cousin of mine, and he was going to be the director of a school, which is like a sister school or brother school, since he was heading it up, to the middle school where I was teaching, where my daughter attended. And I emailed him the link for, so he could review it once it was done. And he called me and he was in tears. And I usually only work with women. But the few men I worked with came from people I knew. And every man that I worked with, when we were finished, they would call me in tears and couldn't believe, like, this is the vision I had in my head. Like, I liked that part of it, but my heart really wasn't in it. And I knew I wasn't going to do it forever. And so I didn't really promote it at all. I wasn't clear on or with my messaging. I didn't really care. My bills were covered. Like, that's not how I wanted to, like, build my wealth. And it showed. It really did show. So that was another lesson. Like, I'm all for profiting from passion, but I also know that you don't necessarily have to be passionate about something to make money. Sometimes you have to go with the skill to make the money, so you can relax and get into the passion and put what you need and the systems behind the passion, so that you don't fall out of love with it because your systems are jacked up and you're not making money when you decide to monetize that stuff you love. But yeah, it's web design was wild. And I probably stayed in it 3 years longer than I was supposed to.
Yeah, and I think I like that you brought up, sticking with your skills rather than your passion, because a lot of the times people start with, like, I really like drawing. I've been drawing since I was a kid, and been doing some stuff on iPad. But then I'm like, because my parents would ask me, especially my dad, he was like, "Did you ever think about selling them?" And I'm like, I have, but then it just becomes a chore that you just work for, and then you lose the passion for it. So I'm like, I would much rather stick to the business and let it be my downtime than eventually hating it and losing my hobby.
You sound like my daughter.
Oh, really?
For years, because she would cook and for different things, and people always like, "Are you going to open a restaurant?" She's like, "No, I don't want to do that." And it's so funny because she got to high school, she played on a soccer team. She was varsity soccer from freshman year to senior year. And her coach for her first 2 years was very much into the nutrition and fitness side. And after her first year, that summer, she was just like laid out on the couch and eating the ice cream all day. I was like, "Please, I'm going to tell you what no one told me when I was your age, but please, Don't ever stop moving, right? Don't ever stop moving. Your body, like, always keep up with the fitness, because when you try to get back into it, it's going to be twice as hard. And of course, your parents tell you something, it's like, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, she went to training the next season. Her first day of training, she sprained her ankle. And then she was able to, a couple of weeks passed and she was able to get back into it. She sprained her other ankle. Both ankles sprained in the same season. Games hadn't even started, right? So she started, but what she did during that time, I think she really took heed to what I said. Because I used to dance and I injured myself dancing. And it was very hard for me to get back into activity. And rather than just like do little activity, I stopped altogether. Now, activity literally hurts just to even move sometimes. So I was like, let me make sure I tell her this so she doesn't end up with this issue when she's older. But now, well, then she used to get the recipes. She started getting the recipes that the coach was giving and different stuff. And she's always cooked. She's cooked since she was 5. And she cooks very well. And she can taste something once and go home and recreate it. Always been gifted that way. So she started making stuff from like the team's favorite dishes, and she would take, instead of me having to provide snacks, she would make the snacks and take them in. And everyone's like, oh my God, you should cook, you should cook. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Then she started turning her favorite foods. She started converting the recipes into like vegetarian and vegan. And she did a really good job at that. And she's always also been into science. And so when she went to college, I was saying to her, I was like, you could probably sell some dinner plates to the athletes because you know how to do the conversions and still making them taste good. And she's very much into labels and, reading labels and fresh ingredients and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, eh. And then in her second year of college, she moved from the dorms into the apartments, and she had a nice sized kitchen. And then I look on Instagram and she's selling dinner plates. Like I had suggested, but she just went on her own, right? So I was like, okay, that's cool. And she was part of the work study program, and she ended up putting her name down for a job that started at 6 a.m, and only her and one other person showed up. And from that moment, whenever she wanted to work, she got to work. And she was working in catering. And she actually worked in catering for the team up until shutdown, when she moved back home. And she would send me like stuff we used to, she was never the baker. I'm the baker. And so she asked me one day, what's a banana bread recipe? So I send it to her. And then she sends me a picture like 2 weeks later of these huge pans of banana bread that she's made. And it looks really good. I was like, yes. And, but she's serving it to the team. And it was like a proud moment, right? But it took her a minute to get into wanting to sell, like wanting to make money from something she liked to do. Because cooking was her stress release. Like if she had a hard day in school, I would be guaranteed a 3-4 course meal for dinner. She would just come home and the pots would come out and she'd get to cooking. Like cooking was her stress release. And she was like, I'm not interested in opening a restaurant. I don't want those kind of headaches. But she eventually got around to it, but she did it on her terms. And I really did like that for her. But she was like, no, I'll make money doing other stuff. It's like, okay, fine. No problem for me.
That's hilarious. So she owns her own thing right now. Does she have a restaurant right now, her own?
She doesn't have a restaurant, but she does meal prep. She's not pushing that really heavy right now. But when she first moved back, so she moved back last year at the end of May, because everything, of course, where she was had shut down. So she moved back home. And I feel like within 2 weeks, she had a catering job. So I try to stay out of her way in the kitchen because it's just like, my kitchen is not big. And it's just like everything's going. And I'm in my room and the air kicked in or something. I'm like, I smell bacon. She doesn't eat pork. That's a funny part too. She's pescatarian, so she doesn't eat pork. She doesn't eat poultry. She doesn't eat red meat, but she'll cook it if someone has hired her to. I'm like, I smell bacon. And I was like, she must have a job. She must be catering. And so I couldn't take it anymore. I finally came downstairs. There were waffles going and sausages, and she made biscuit. Like, she made the biscuits from scratch. And there's just a whole lot of stuff going on. I'm like, what's going on? She was like, oh yeah, she catered a brunch. Turns out for a former schoolmate of hers who was also a former student of mine, had gotten married, and I think it was her baby shower or something like that. And she hired my daughter. She was like, oh my goodness, you're back. I need you to cater this for me. So she catered that. And then she was doing meal prep for her friends. She wasn't pushing it too hard, but like every now and then she'll get somebody who will be like, can you make me 2 or 3 meals for this week? And that type of thing. She does it on the side. But when she was up in university, she was she was catering. And then one summer she was catering and DJing. So she was like, I get 2 checks. Because she's always been into music and loved music and played music, and she even tried her hand at scoring music. Like, she's just a whiz kid. But I feel like she is about to do I overheard a conversation, I'll just say that. And it sounds like she'll be getting, because her degrees are in bioengineering, and her focus is on how food affects the body and health. And so I feel like she's about to go into like food and nutrition with somebody who's doing the physical fitness side of it. So she said she enjoys the meal prep side more than catering. And basically because you don't have to have all the food hot and keep it hot at the same time. So she's like, food prep is so much easier. But she's just found a way to keep the love in the doing what she loves part of things.
Totally worked out.
Yes. And I'm glad because it keeps her happy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so this conversation has been awesome. I feel like we can keep going and going. And I'm looking at the time. I don't want to keep you for so long. So if I know you're the expert at operations, all things systems, automations, Dubsado, ClickUp. So what's the best way for people to work with you?
Okay, so I currently have a VIP day for Dubsado setups, which also includes an intensive for getting your processes together around your signature service. Auntee Rik, AUNTEERIK.com is the best way to hit me up for that. I also have a VIP day that is just the operations, processes, and systems part of it. I have a planner that it's a business operations planner, so it's not like a daily agenda, but it does take you through organizing your business. It's called the Biz Organizer. That's also on my site. You can drop by on Twitter. AUNTEERIK is my Twitter handle. Just, drop by, say hi, and this is where you saw me. And then if this is I haven't picked a date yet, but my Biz Organizer is a planner on its own. It comes with a companion guide that walks you through, but I'm actually in the process of turning that into something else that for freelancers and solopreneurs and micro business owners who want to start getting their operations in order, and don't necessarily want to hire a coach to do it. But I just actually yesterday had a session with a course creator, and so it'll be fall-ish, end of summer-ish 21, when that'll be going.
Nice. Okay, thank you so much, Auntee Rik. Really appreciate you sharing all your experiences and stories. That's been amazing interview, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be the first, and now you can get all the other people here.
Yep, thank you for kicking this series off.
Alrighty.